afternoon, Kalispera. I'm Deborah Wynn Smith, the President and CEO of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness in Washington, D.C., and the President of the International Organization, the Global Federations of Competitiveness Councils. And it's my great honor and privilege to be here and make a few remarks before we turn to a very fascinating discussion. This is my 11th year at the Delphi Economic Forum, so it's very exciting to see the evolution and the tremendous accomplishment that's been achieved under the leadership of Simeon Samoka. So here we are under the mountain of the Oracle, and we're grappling with these incredible challenges that are occurring at warp speed, the shock of the new, and really what we call at the U.S. Council an era of discontinuity and disruption. And the world has really fundamentally shifted beneath our feet. Over the last 6 years, the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, that's comprised of CEOs, university presidents, labor leaders, and national lab directors, have been really working to understand these global tectonic shifts and what they mean to the next era of U.S. productivity, prosperity, and security, and in turn, bringing this work with our partners in the Global Federation of Competitiveness Council to develop an agenda to spur global prosperity and security. I'm quickly going to mention these forces, and we're going to get into more depth in our discussion. Three forces really are reshaping everything. We know the exponential advances and deployment of the new technologies and their convergence are reshaping every job, every technology, civil society, as well as military operations, geopolitics. Energy transitions are occurring again at rapid pace, but with the new demands for electricity and power, for AI data centers. Again, who would have thought a few years ago we would have seen the rapid deployment of next-generation nuclear module reactors, et cetera, et cetera. And now, of course, with what's happening in the Middle East, the whole issue of access to fossil fuels has come back to the forefront. Can't power our economies on windmills and solar panels right now. And then, of course, we have the most strategic geopolitical competition underway between the United States and Europe and China and the Western Alliance. The U.S. Council on Competitiveness has framed a lot of this in our agenda called the 10X imperative. How can we innovate 10X times faster, involve more innovators, include more innovations, and very importantly, make the big disruptive changes structurally that are required to fuel prosperity in the years ahead, and to move beyond incremental, small, minor changes that do not carry us forward. Our first pillar calls on advanced economies to have a new vision for this technological and geostrategic set of challenges. We also have to all build the most competitive environments for innovation. That means tax policy, regulation, protection of intellectual property, et cetera, et cetera. We need our allies coming together to assert global leadership on ethics and values that are underpinning these new technologies. We need to accelerate our nation's expansion to energy abundance and security, not energy scarcity. And we're, of course, in a world of energy scarcity right now. We can't just focus on entrepreneurship and startups. We have to scale up to build large enterprises with advanced manufacturing. We need a new empowered workforce that's going to be able to compete and prosper in the age of AI. And very importantly, we're going to talk about this, we need to expand and deepen what we call placemaking innovation all around the globe. So we have a tremendous panel that's going to discuss all of this, and I want to welcome them to this discussion. And let me introduce them quickly. From Greece, I have my long friend, colleague and partner, Christos Vigalos, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Piraeus Bank. He's been a distinguished fellow of the GFCC, the Global Federation. He's also, Piraeus Bank as a member. He has led so much of the economic transformation in Greece through banking and access to capital that has placed Greece in such a strong position today, coming out of its recession and the crisis, and now really leading a lot of the growth in Europe. And you're a tremendous leader, Christos. Thank you. Also, my dear friend and colleague, Simos Anastonopoulos, who is the CEO of a leading pharmaceutical company, but also you led the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce and then had the vision to create the Greek Competitiveness Council, Compete Greece. And so you also are at the forefront of developing the strategies for the next era of growth and productivity in Greece. I'd like to introduce our newest member, university president member to the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, whose members are competitiveness councils, companies, universities, and organizations. Dr. Faldo Khoury, who's the president and CEO of the American University of Beirut, a long-standing historic institution in the Middle East, and we're very honored that you're here with us, given what's going on in Lebanon and your part of the world, and being with us at Delphi Economic Forum. But you are a game changer in higher education and really leading this transformation also in economic development. And then finally, I'd like to welcome our newest panel in the GFCC member. I think many of you will know her. I've been teasing her a little bit, saying she's a movie star, but she really is. Bettany Hughes, who is one of the world's preeminent historians, authors, broadcasters. I don't know how many of you watched her programs on the BBC. Tremendous scholarship on Greece, the ancient world. I was at the opening of the Bulgarian Council of Competitiveness last May and had visited Thracian sites and said, I just love Bettany Hughes. And a gentleman said, well, I know her. And that's why she's here today. Yeah. So we're thrilled. And then finally, my dear friend and colleague, Chad Evans, who's the Executive Vice President of the Council on Competitiveness and leads our whole innovation strategy and the National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. The U.S. Council is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, contiguous with the 250th anniversary of American independence. So it's a very busy year for us as we create a new agenda for the nation. So I'd like to just start with you first, Bethany, because past is prologue. And I'm an archaeologist too, not in your league, but studied Mycenaean and Minoan and excavated here in Greece. Share with us your perspective on the ancient world and how there were disruptors and discontinuity and what it means as we think of the next half of the 21st century.
With absolute pleasure. What a delight it is to be here. Thank you for welcoming me to the panel. Just three really brief observations, if I may, actually about the Delphi Economic Forum itself. So I've been to 25 events now. I've done my homework. And there are three things that I've observed. One is that there is a real danger that we exist in the hubris of the contemporary. What I've heard on every single panel that I've been to is people saying we're living in times which are totally unprecedented, that the polycrisis that we're experiencing now has never been experienced before. We have to find entirely new ways to deal with it. Will we survive? But as a historian, the great thing is you have the long view. And I know that over the last tens of thousands of years, we have had plenty of chances to self-exterminate as a species. And the fact that we are sitting here now proves that we don't do that. We are a stupid and a stubborn people sometimes, but we always find solutions. So I just wanted to bring a bit of positivity into the room. The fact that we're here proves that we can make change. Secondly, thank you. One other observation is that in all the panels, I think everyone is looking through the wrong end of the telescope. I'm hearing a lot about process and nothing about purpose. What I see through time is that the strongest, most successful societies, states, nations have the self-awareness to ask not just the what and the how, but the why. And that is something I'd love if we could do on this panel, and if that could be discussed more generally. And just finally, as I'm the guest of the Council for Competitiveness, a little brief idea about competition. The Greeks in the room will know that the ancient Greek word for competition is agon. And agon, really interestingly, originally, when it first appears in Homer, is not a fight. It is not a combat. Agon was a circular space where people met to have dialogue. And it then came to take on this notion of competitiveness. As we now know, agony, the experience of agony, derives from agon. So it would be great if we could talk about how agon has gone from being a space where people cultivate culture and conversation to something which is agonizing. So this is my prehistoric offering to the panel.
Thank you, Bettany. That's wonderful. Does anyone want to make a comment on that before I turn to you, Christos, to take us into the business financial world that powers everything?
A very interesting introduction. If we knew, we could have prepared differently. Now, though, we have to continue there and take note of what you said. It's The why is interesting.
This is meant to be a free-flowing
Well, Deborah,
conversation.
maybe just something that strikes me as you mentioned our 40th, I'm actually taking back to our 20th anniversary, where you challenged our leadership of CEOs, university presidents, and labor leaders to think differently about what competitiveness meant. And in fact, we talk about it in circular terms. Competitiveness really is about imagination, insight, ingenuity, invention, and impact as a system, as a circle. And if you don't have, or a part of that loop is broken, you are not able to collaborate or compete successfully. And so maybe we'll come back to that, but we definitely resonate with your definition and how you think about competitiveness.
Yeah, as a physical circle.
Thank you, Chad.
I love the point that the perma-crises provide both an excuse and an opportunity. You know, I mean, being in Greece, we have to remember that Pericles built the Parthenon during the many perma-crises that Athens had. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we'll talk about it a little later, Vannevar Bush, built the entire United States scientific infrastructure in the lead up to World War II. Oh, now better?
Yes.
Okay,
Much
sorry.
better.
Was probably turned off for a good reason. So what I was saying is that crises do provide tremendous opportunity. As Bethany was pointing out, throughout history, disruptions do provide opportunities, as the United States educational system is a testament to that.
Absolutely. And of course, Hippocrates and the whole medical concept of a crisis, you had to wait for a certain point to reach the crisis before you could treat the disease. And the Greeks saw crisis as the opportunity, not something that was negative. Back to the optimism that we're going to hopefully have. All right, Krista.
And that's a perfect intro for me to say what happened in Greece in the last 10 years, where we have been from the years of crisis to adjustment, and now we are from what was the problem child of Europe, we are the poster child of Europe, and a lot of these foundations were actually built through the years of the crisis. There has been a lot of adjustment, even socially, I would say, but also economically, fiscally, and in any sense of the world. We had a panel yesterday where I was lucky and happy enough to be with three corporates that are based in Greece. They were created in the years of the crisis, and they sell 99% of their products in the world, in big corporations like Google, like Amazon, like Microsoft, and they are in the technology field, and they have been a product of the years of the crisis. So Greece now is much more stable, and stability is important because it gives us actually the ability to be a lot more open to innovation. It has very strong banks, which again, being, I would say, pillars of the society, they are in a position to invest in actually delivering growth, innovation, and ultimately prosperity, and has a very active technology sector and ability, which starts, Fabio, from the university education. We have very strong universities in the country that are creating a large number of the right quality of graduates that we can then use in all the work that we are doing for innovation. And Piraeus itself, I'm very proud to say that we were daring enough to try and disrupt ourselves by creating, as an offspring, a digital bank using all the ingredients that I'm talking about, a very capable team out of the University of Ioannina, who are the technical guys. It's a totally Greek experiment, a Greek bank, and a Greek company which is created basically out of the University of Ioannina. We came together. We actually have Ioannina as our base, is a location in northern Greece, and we are disrupting ourselves in a way, and actually we believe we are creating value for, of course, Piraeus, but overall for the country. So it's a positive message for me right now for Greece, and thank you, but then for reminding us that, you know, the end of the world was near many times. And then, you know, things are moving on. Looks like the markets recognize that in a way, somehow, because you've seen how they're reacting to what's happening in Iran. And, of course, for Greece, a positive message, I will say. I think we are on a good direction as a country, and we can be a positive message for Europe as well.
Thank you. And Christos, you'll remember that back in 2022, we were here in Greece, Simos and you and Simeon Simokos, we convened the annual meeting of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Council in Greece and had our field trip to Ioannina and saw the whole making of that and the placemaking innovation in Ioannina with the medical environment and tech and everything. It's a vibrant ecosystem, and you really have been the anchor for that in the digital world.
And the core of it is a very active university of Ioannina, which is also embedded into the society, a very good mayor of the city, which actually was in our offices before I came to Delphi. We just signed an agreement with Ioannina, the city, to support them as much as we can by actually upgrading a lot of their infrastructure and social areas, etc., like a famous park that they have in the middle of the city. And there is a total community of people, and we even have international companies camping up there, getting people from the technical university. So it's an ecosystem that is worthwhile talking about it as a good example of what can be done in a provincial city in northern Greece, which is as vibrant as being Athens itself.
And multicultural, and the power of the private partnership with the university, what you just articulated, is a core ingredient of placemaking innovation.
It's absolutely, and I would say it's in our DNA. Now that Piraeus is a lot more capable, given our profitability and our ability to create value, I say with all words that, you know, we are here to A, create value, and B, give back to the society a part of the value that we are creating.
Thank you. Well, let me turn to you, Dr. Khoury, because being in Beirut, one of the great cities of the world with a great history, of course, back into antiquity, I mean, you've brought an incredible career as a leader in academia from the United States to the American University of Beirut. You've got major partnerships with the University of Nicosia, but you're also driving this placemaking innovation. So share with us your perspective on the pivotal role of universities, yes, in research and development, but in creating these new ecosystems of the future.
So, I mean, to go back to a part of our discussion, Deborah, you know, the planning is not optional, right? So the opportunity presents itself, crisis or otherwise, but then you need a plan. And for us, we had determined for some time that we needed a strategy, a long-term strategy, not just to make the university more sustainable, but to create a nidus for people to stay. If you think of the secret sauce of the great American universities, and you go back to the period between the end of the 19th century and the mid-1930s, US universities got 6% of all Nobel Prizes, way behind Germany, Great Britain, France, and even Hungary. So the predominant power was in Central and Western Europe, as we know it. But there was a brilliant man called Vannevar Bush, who was provost of MIT, who was deeply trusted by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he developed the National Science Program. That allowed first the US to absorb people who were escaping Europe's moment of great nationalism and sort of exclusive nationalism and peril, but it built the basis for the American universities such that by 1976, all Nobel Prizes in that 1 year were people who were at American universities. So what's the impact on the economics? If you think of the great universities around the world, it's hard to escape the coupling of Stanford's innovation and the growth of Silicon Valley from a nice, sleepy area just outside of San Francisco to arguably one of the 2-3 great economic centers in the world. Same for Harvard and MIT in Massachusetts, and the great universities of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania for the pharmaceutical world. So to go to Simos's former area of interest, if you think of the massive wealth and discovery created in pharma, and that 95% of the original fundamental discoveries were done in academia. So the role of the American University of Beirut, which has long been to generate the next set of ethical leaders, mostly succeeded throughout the Arab world and the Eastern Mediterranean, has to also be in this period where we've had these 3 great disruptions. The first disruption, of course, being democratization of knowledge. So the internet did that. You could do things. The second is the explosion of AI. AI changed things. You either can ignore it at your peril or you start to incorporate it, because a search that would take you a month to do could take you 30 seconds these days. It's not going to replace everything. And the third was the pandemic. The pandemic showed people all around the world that they might prefer to have a career and a life nearer their family. That was a transformative moment. More and more Greeks decided to stay in Greece, Brits decided to stay in Britain, et cetera, and Lebanese and others decided to stay in Lebanon. So our goal was to see where we could have that impact. That's why in the midst of this set of concomitant crises, we had a 3rd worst financial collapse of any country since the 19th century. In Lebanon, we had to transform 6,000 people's pay to US dollar based, spent $250 million of our endowment for that and other reasons. Pandemic, several wars, an uprising, but it presented a tremendous opportunity to see where do our students, where does our community come from? And what we discovered is more than 50% above the people who were interested in coming to Beirut wanted the American University of Beirut to be their undergraduate or graduate school of choice, but they were frightened, or their parents were frightened, of being in Beirut, which is why we launched the American University of Beirut Mediterraneo in Paphos, Cyprus. Now, why Cyprus? Cyprus has a growing higher education sector, and the government of Cyprus was extremely cooperative in taking away some of the things that would allow us to grow at pace. So it's been a great disruption, but it's a great opportunity. I have to say, this was part of our strategic plan that we finalized by 2020. We knew we needed to choose a second site as a twin campus, smaller, and we looked at 15 countries, and we chose Cyprus over Dubai or Greece or others for that and several reasons. So the key is that higher education has to remember our core constituency are the fantastic students that are going to be the people who create the next sector of knowledge and the next opportunity for growth economically and socially. If you have more people creating jobs, you have less people picking up arms, less people who are poor, more people who are not afraid of the other. So that's a social and economic dimension we believe in.
It was indeed a brilliant strategy, and I think 5 years hence we will see a very flourishing academic enterprise in Cyprus extending into the larger Mediterranean, of course with Greece and writ large. So congratulations on that. We're going to come back to place-making innovation, but you did bring up, the life sciences pharmaceutical, and I was involved as a government official when we saw the creation of the biotech industry because of the government allowing the patent for gene splicing, the Boyer-Cohen patent that came out of University of San Francisco to be licensed to a startup that became Genentech. So let's turn to the future of the bioeconomy, because this is a great fertile area. And Simos, talk a little bit about that, and then share with us some of the strategy you're leading in Compete Greece, because it's very significant now during this time of disruption.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, it's great to be here one more time. I think you mentioned that this is your 11th time here. Actually, it's the same for me. I've been here since the beginning. And,
do we get an award, do you think, from Simeon?
maybe 12. Simeon is already here. So,
Oh, he's just here, okay.
And, since Delphi Economic Forum has been one of the founding members of the Greek Council on Competitiveness, I'm really very proud to be here from the beginning and see how this forum has developed to become one of the major contributors to the new image and respect that the country is enjoying today. Right. And congratulations to Simeon and the team. And it really gives me great pleasure. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here one more time. Now, what we're doing in the Greek Council of Competitiveness, CompetGA, to make it easier, is that we try also to contribute through our members and through our advisory committee. All the big four are there, Bank of Piraeus, the Bank of Greece are participating there. So to measure and the level of competitiveness of the Greek economy and try to propose solutions, ideas, quick wins to improve that. And make no mistake, Greece has made a tremendous progress over these last at least 7 or 8 years there. Now, the competitiveness levels of the country remains almost the same, though, because all of the neighbors are also improving. But the country today has changed the level of its economy. Today it's respected. I think Christos Megalou, in what he said before, really presented the state of the economy today, where we were before, where we are now. And what we are looking for, actually, is for the next big move. And the country has gone through a transformation that has been unique for European, maybe for global standards. What has happened in our economy there. It's well respected today, and it is, though, one of the, I wouldn't say weakest links in Europe, but our economy depends so much on the European policies and the global competitiveness situation that is really affected by the major events that are happening in the country. Our economy is rather small. We try to change the model of the economic model of the country, and we're trying to move towards a more export-oriented economy that is going to rely more on innovation. And there is the significance of the connection between business and government and universities, so that we can all work together. And these are really the areas that we need to work more. How we can improve more the magnitude of the enterprises in Greece, so that we can create clusters that are more effective. How we can operate together with the university to educate our people in the kind of skills and that the economy needs today, and how we can promote innovation. Because although Greece is one of the countries that is leading in papers, and our scientists are among the best, our universities are really very good, the patents, for example, that we file are among the least, the last in Europe. And this is the big transformation that we need to make, from research to patents, from theory to practice. And this is what we are trying to do today. With the help of GFCC and the model of the Compete US, for example, has been for us really a leading assistance on how we can do that. Your presence here over the years, the involvement that we have with GFCC has been really a tremendous tool for us to try to come up with quick wins so that our economy evolves in a much faster rate.
Thank you.
Pharma, of course, but pharma, is much easier for me to discuss because it's part of our business. but pharma has been one of the major points that Greece is excelling today. The Greek pharmaceutical companies are among the best in Europe. We are exporting a great amount of products, and we really could sustain not only the country, but if I remember the numbers well, about 40% of the European needs. And in an area that the European Union has finally realized that it's about time to bring back some of the production that we have given away to other countries today, I believe that this presents a very good case for the Greek economy, for the Greek pharmaceutical industry to thrive. And it's actually a very good example of what the Greek companies can do.
And of course, you have Pfizer's investment and a lot of partnerships in Thessaloniki, and it is a very vibrant sector. Chad, turning to you, and you might mention that coming straight from Delphi, we're going to Omaha, Nebraska for one of the U.S. Council's national competitiveness conversations around the future of the bioeconomy. So mention that, but then, you talked, Dr. Khoury, about the Stanfords and MITs, but we're working on the great depth of the entire country to be innovation engines.
To be frank, Deborah, University of Nebraska has a formidable clinical development enterprise and innovation, at least in clinical and basic biology. So we have one of our companies that's hosted by the University of Nebraska, a company spun off by the American University of Beirut. So you're in good territory.
Well, I need to lure you to Omaha. Actually, we're going to be there just a few days before Berkshire Hathaway, so we're going to have some spin-off of those people coming to our big meeting. Chad?
Yeah, Deborah, I want to get exactly to that point. I think there's an 800-pound gorilla. Our topic is disruption, right?
Yeah.
We haven't talked about China. So let's just take the one example of bio and pharma, just because it was just mentioned. 5 years ago, China accounted for only 5% of the global deal value. 5 years later, 48% of all global value in biotech generated by China. That's a skyrocketing number. In the United States, 80% of all pharmaceutical companies are dependent upon Chinese inputs for their product. So we have incredible pharmaceutical and biotech companies in the United States, but the strategic dependencies are huge, and there are massive ways that can be disrupted. And even going back to the original point around the Vannevar Bush model and the nearly 80 years of compounded benefit in the United States from Vannevar Bush model, 2024, China surpassed the United States in terms of its total R&D investment, $1.03 trillion. 2024, that wasn't expected until about 2027, 2028, so they were ahead of their own curve. That alone should be a wake-up call. But they set another world record this year, $1.2 trillion of export value, trade surplus. No other country in the world has ever generated that much surplus. So that is another wake-up call. That is completely transforming the global environment. So I just want to put that a little bit of context, because what the United States is also finding is our model is changing. And there is experimentation at the federal level in terms of how does it invest, in what does it invest, basic research applied. But what we are seeing happening across the United States, and I think this is what you wanted me to touch upon, Deborah, is the revivification of place-making innovation. This is beyond the original work on clusters of innovation, regional economic development. These are much more intentional strategies by all sorts of communities around the country to identify strengths and assets, how they can build upon them. And we've been conducting, the U.S. Council will actually have done nearly a dozen of these competitiveness conversations, huge, massive regional innovation summits, and all sorts of really interesting communities. For example, we were in Boise, Idaho. Why would we have gone to Boise, Idaho? Boise is the geographically most isolated city in North America. By all traditional economic development theory, nothing should happen there. Nothing should develop. And yet, it has attracted $6 billion of investment from Micron, billions from the federal government in the United States. It has, and why? It has an incredible university. It has access to a national laboratory. It has access to energy and water. So it is coupling assets to redefine its own destiny. And we have found this in many other parts of the United States. Look at the Indiana-Illinois corridor. Deborah actually captured, you should get actually some credit for this, Deborah, from Indiana and Illinois. Chips, qubits, molecules. So they are intentionally creating investment in those areas with the purpose of making new place. And so I think what we're learning across a wide variety of our placemaking innovation summits is that you have to have sort of radical collaboration. You have to, in some sense, not compete. You actually have to collaborate and build and these ecosystems because they don't come naturally. It requires leadership that sort of, I think you exercise, all of you exercise this, that goes beyond your own institutional interest to drive new value creation in society. That is fundamental. It also requires sort of a curated, we call it curated densification. You can't win at everything. So where you cooperate, where you compete has to be thoughtful. And you really have to build on assets. And every community is going to be different. We're not going to replicate every Silicon Valley across the United States, but we are going to find ways to empower communities to think differently about themselves, particularly in an environment where they may not be able to rely upon the traditional models of economic development, research and development support that they have for the past 80 years. And we see big, huge moves in the quantum space in the US. We've just done a SWOT analysis of 8 different communities across the US, massive investment potential. There's going to be huge competition in that space. But that's where we're seeing, I think, the future in the US, AI, quantum, but that's vaporizing all sorts of other parts of our economy. We can talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, something I'm really struck by what you're both saying is, just to your point, that a truism of the story of history is that powerful civilizations leave behind great monuments, great civilizations leave behind powerful ideas. And that's something that you see repeated again and again. Very interesting what you're talking about, collaboration as well as competition. If you look at the old Chinese symbol for harmony at the time of the Axial Age, so this is with Confucius, Socrates, Buddha, it's when the world fundamentally changed, when everybody became economic actors. We knew that individuals had agency through the strength of their own mind. The old Chinese at that time, for the word harmony, was a bowl in which was mixed 2 different things, that you get harmony through the collaboration and the mixing of the different, just a little word derivation. You know, it's why we have arms, because this is different to our body and it's joined to us with harmony. But just one, I think that Greece is in an extraordinary position of strength here. You're talking about the pharma business, and something we're always challenged by as historians, people saying, why does the past matter? What relevance does it have? And we now know that scientifically, at a molecular level, we are creatures of memory. So memory doesn't sit in a kind of chest of drawer in our brains. Memory is a network across our mind in something which is called the default mode network. And the default mode network is where both memory and imagination sits. So we cannot have a future idea unless we access a memory of some kind. And the very fact that pharmakia is a 3,500-year-old Greek word written on linear B tablets from around here, and it didn't mean drugs, it meant useful little things. That's an extraordinary part of the Greek narrative, to say we are the first people to identify what pharmakia are, so that adds to your, the potential of your competitiveness. But it's through archaeology that we learn that thing.
And we could have a long talk on that, but we don't. We have 3 minutes and others waiting to take over this stage. So I'm going to ask everybody, I'll start with you, Simos, any thoughts you want to tie this together, and one big idea on what's going to be your 2026, 2027 disruption, so we come back next year. We'll hear what's been happening.
There are many things and many ideas here. But I would like to make sure that I leave you with 2 points that with such a distinguished audience and panel today, I think are important for the Greek economy. I believe they are important also for the European economy. So if you allow me these 2 minutes.
No, you don't have 2 minutes.
No, okay, 30 seconds. Okay. The level of regulation from the European Union is becoming increasingly unsustainable for the European and the Greek economies to continue to grow and thrive. So I believe we need to make an alliance to persuade the regulators in the European Union to stop this, to start cutting red tape. And the second is that the Greek economy is operating with increasing surpluses today, which is a very good sign about the how healthy the Greek economy is. It is about time, though, that some of these surpluses are directed towards the real economy, the manufacturing units that can create a healthier environment for the businesses to continue to work in, especially energy costs.
Manufacturing matters.
If I want to say one word is, we need to address the translation gap between ideas, and there are many ideas, and execution, strategy and execution. This is what even Simos now talked just about, and making sure that we hopefully can use artificial intelligence, which we didn't discuss today, but to our benefit rather than to our peril. And this is actually what we are trying to do at Piraeus. We just built and we announced an AI hub, which is going to be essentially translating ideas into product services and ultimately customer satisfaction.
So I'll be a bit contrarian and I'll say I think we're in an existential moment for the university. The university's core values, its appreciation. In the United States, sadly, 37% of people believe in higher education. In Lebanon, a country in massive crisis, the single highest rated sector is higher education, 82% approval rating. Why? I think we are reinventing higher education, and we've taken some bets, some gambles. We've doubled down not just on a new school of AI, but on recruiting philosophers, archaeologists, historians, English and Arabic professors, because we think the humanities draws people in and helps them to learn how to think. That's the thing AI can't replace.
We have minus 10 seconds. So 4,000
We'll
years
take a few
ago,
more.
when women and men sat in a forum like this, they would make a vow to one another. It's a very beautiful vow. It's Anna Shulmi U Balatu, which means to peace and to life. And Shulmi is a word that means an unbroken whole, to talk about what you said, competitiveness, and it gives us the words shalom and salam. So I say Anna Shulmi U Balatu, to peace and to life.
Thank you.
Deborah, manufacturing absolutely matters. We see every day the disappearing of jobs from AI. We know we have to find a way to use AI to actually empower the human, so there's a lot of work to do there. That implies a massive new social contract in every country. We all need a compute plan nationally. We all need to be thinking about transition plans. We need to be thinking about assistance. But then ultimately, how we compete against a GPU is really going to matter. So we have to think differently about talent and how we actually may need to come together as allies for cross-national talent production models that are very different, perhaps revolutionizing the way we think about higher education, but involving the private and the public sectors.
Thank you all. Well, I want to just close by saying the week of October 9th, this year, the Global Federation of Competitiveness Council will have its big Global Innovation Summit in Sofia, Bulgaria, hosted by the new Competitiveness Council of Bulgaria and our corporate member, GBS, Kalin Peshov. I welcome everyone to come. We're going to talk about the innovation and infrastructure and energy, but also a great culture that you are an expert on, of course, the Thracians and Romans, etc., and part of the Greek world. And we're delighted to welcome also back into the GFCC the leadership of the Saudi Government Investment Authority and others. So join the journey. We're innovators. We're going to build these place-making centers for prosperity and security. And I will close with Aristotle's wonderful concept of eudaimonia. The goal is to prosper and thrive. And we can do that by working together. Thank you all so much.